Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Amanda Hagen. I'm the medical director of Cleveland Clinic at Work. So Cleveland Clinic at Work is an occupational medicine group within the Cleveland Clinic that does outward-facing OC health. So we have an employee health section, which takes care of all of our caregivers. And then we have Cleveland Clinic at Work, which takes care of businesses, corporations, other entities throughout Northeast Ohio and beyond. So that provides services such as medical surveillance, physical exams, workers' comp, any kind of occupational health need you can think of really falls under that umbrella. So we know many of you are calling in from all over the country, and we hope that you and your families are staying well. We want to start this call today by taking a moment to acknowledge all of our frontline caregivers. We continue to hear such inspiring stories of courage, teamwork, and compassion. We have so much gratitude for their commitment to putting our patients and our communities first. We appreciate you joining us today and allowing us this opportunity to share a unique look at Cleveland Clinic's response to managing a workforce through the COVID pandemic. Over the past several weeks, we have been fielding calls and questions from business leaders around the country regarding safe business practices in this era of COVID. We have created a variety of resources for employers, including a website, clevelandclinic.org/COVID-19 at work. We update the site regularly with the latest COVID information, upcoming webinars, and our recently launched industry-specific playbooks. Please sign up for our updates to receive the latest information. We are pleased to offer this webinar series with today's topic, focusing on the emotional well-being of our workforce as we look to safely return them to work. We have received a lot of questions in advance. We will also be accepting questions throughout the Zoom Q&A feature today. So click on the Q&A button in the webinar controls, type your question and click send. We're going to try to get to the most important issues, but if there's something that we miss, please contact us and we will get an answer and post it. To start, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Leo Pozuelo, Vice Chair of Clinical Operations for the Department of Psychiatry and Psychology here at the Cleveland Clinic. Welcome, Leo.
Hey, thanks, Amanda. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes with you just going over a little bit of the background about what this pandemic has meant from the psychological and psychiatric front, and then make a segue then to my colleague who's going to be talking about the employee health plan and how they mobilize resources to deal with it here at the Cleveland Clinic. There's a couple considerations about this natural disaster, the pandemic. First of all, this is just something that is ongoing. It's not an acute event, as you all know, and then there's a resolution. So the uncertainty about the prevalence of the disease, measures to be taken, questions, for example, when the vaccine is going to come out, these certainly play on the mind of the caregivers and the organization. The other aspect of this is that, we have been dealing with quarantine, and the psychological aspects of quarantine are certainly pronounced. You can envision that sometimes being in proximity to your loved ones is a good thing, and you may grow together, but you can also quickly grow apart, right? And think about the cohort of patients that do suffer from depression and anxiety, which in a normal situation is going to be 15-20% of the general population. And these scenarios, which are clearly unnatural, are going to be exacerbating them. And finally, we know, and this is the point of the healthcare experience, that our frontline caregivers are certainly more predisposed to depression, anxiety, stress, and to be very frank, PTSD. Being witnesses to the trauma next to it. And it's something that we're very, very cautious about screening, because this is not a short-term thing, but it's more than likely looking like a long-term phenomenon. Next slide, please. So I apologize that this is a little bit of a busy slide. It's a reference from a recent medical article, JAMA there on the bottom, you see it. But I think it has a lot of relevance as to how we look at organizations in addressing the needs of the workers. This is specifically a survey that was done of healthcare professionals about what they wanted from their organization. It really looks like Maslow's hierarchical needs. And really, if you kind of look through the columns and the rows, it's important for the organization, the employer, to feel that their employees are heard. It's important that they feel that they're protected. This has a lot of relevance as far as safety and PPE. It feels important to them that they're prepared for different roles that may happen. This certainly happened here in the Cleveland Clinic with redeployment. It's important that they feel that they're supported and that they're also cared for. I'm going to make a little bit of a stop on the supported feature. And this is important because there's both physical and emotional needs that need to be addressed to your workers, to your caregivers here. And the physical needs here at the Cleveland Clinic were very tangible. We have a separate department, Office of Caregiver Experience, that does a wonderful job of having comfort stations and meals and making things around and available to the workers. Clearly identified as one of the key things as far as feeling that they're supported. And in the red, you'll have the psychological support, which is equally important. What we found in looking at, past episodes of natural disasters and anticipating the needs of the caregivers, that it's important to have just-in-time psychological needs. And so what the Cleveland Clinic did is it built upon the fantastic work that my colleague Amy Freadling and Caring for Caregivers had done, providing on-demand sessions for the caregivers. And we actually provided an emotional support line available 24/7 so that that individual, he or she, could have a in-the-moment session with that counselor to get them through whatever time of the day that may be. And then we also facilitated increased access to psychiatry and psychology, knowing that this is not going to be just a short-term dedication, but we're going to have to be prepared for the long run. And finally, next slide, it's important to kind of remind ourselves, how we have a first aid kit, a psychological first aid kit. And these are really the common tenets that permeate any type of intervention. It's important for the caregiver, the employee, to have a sense of safety. And this is really an obligation of both parties. It's important to maximize the individual's ability to care of themselves and their family. This is very important in the long term. Again, this is going to be a marathon. It's not going to be a sprint. It's really a unique opportunity to enhance wellness techniques and calming skills that people may know on the periphery, superficially, but if there are some easy ways to really demonstrate that, and again, my colleague will show those, they can certainly be very effective. It's important to have the connectedness to family and social support. I think we've all struggled at some point with what the terminology social distancing means. We don't want to equate that with social isolation. And how do we keep that connectedness? And finally, it's important to foster hope and optimism while not denying the risk that's out there. I think it's incumbent as time goes on that the organization that you work for can deliver that in a very equitable fashion. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda.
Okay, thanks, Leo. Now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Amy Freadling. Amy is the Director of Caring for Caregivers Staff and Employee Assistance Programs. She's a licensed professional clinical counselor with supervision designation and a certified employee assistance professional. She has her doctorate in counseling and human development. Welcome, Amy.
Thanks, Amanda. So we're definitely living in an unprecedented time, and it's filled with a lot of unknowns. Work, even at home, we need to be flexible as we respond to changing rules and expectations. With this flexibility and with decreased availability of our normal outlets, there's little time or even opportunity for rest and repair. What we've experienced is what we would call complicated grief and loss. I think we often think about death when we refer to the word grief, but it's also important to understand that there are many other losses that can cause grief. Loss of planned events, loss of socialization, and loss of various freedoms that we may have previously taken for granted. As a result, it's quite normal for individuals to feel that fear, anxiety, sadness, anger. And in fact, I recently saw a survey that 88% of American workers right now have reported moderate to severe symptoms of stress. With this experience comes the potential for burnout in our workforce, decreased morale, even mistakes. Given the current state of the emotional health during COVID-19, it's important that employers really demonstrate a high level of empathy. So for leaders, this may include checking in with one's employees both individually, also in regular meetings. listening carefully to concerns that are being voiced, and ensuring that employees feel well heard and understood. Communication should really come frequently and in various formats, both verbally and in writing. Leaders should communicate what is known, but also admit what they don't know. It's important that people feel connected to one another, whether still reporting to the workplace or now working remotely. At the Cleveland Clinic, we have social media platforms, peer support initiatives, departmental team building exercises, all ways to stay really well connected, both formally and informally. And I think supportive resources really should be made highly visible and highly normalized. There really should be no shame in seeking help. At the Cleveland Clinic, I'm really proud that we've had a number of excellent resources made available to our caregivers. That includes a COVID-19 toolkit on our intranet, filled with a number of well-being resources. There's apps that people can download. There's articles on self-care and well-being. There's information on our latest product, the Clarity e-coaching tool. There's so many wonderful resources for people to explore and a nice menu of options for people varying on their interests and needs. We do have what I believe is a very well-trusted staff and employee assistance program that offers free confidential counseling and referral services to both employees and their household dependents. And that's a really, really critical piece to keep in mind, is that not only are we taking care of our employees, but also taking care of their loved ones. During this time, we've expanded virtual services to increase the ease and the access of counseling in a time of social distancing. And as Leo had mentioned earlier, we partner with behavioral health to ensure that there's a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week COVID-19 emotional support line for people who need a boost in resilience at any time, day or night. Finally, the organization's done a remarkable job in providing outreach to employees who have tested positive for COVID-19, coordinating food delivery and other resources, and ensuring a safe and secure support of reentry into the workplace. As leaders, it may be very difficult to manage your team's resilience, let alone your own. It's important first and foremost then to check in with yourself. Determine how you're feeling each and every day. Give yourself permission to feel those feelings. You don't have to be a superhero right now. As you're feeling your feelings and naming them, decide what's going well, identify areas where you might be struggling, and commit to things that you can do right now to feel your very best. This is your needs assessment for moving forward. As a leader, you should model self-care along the way. Make time for hobbies. Make time for quiet time as well. Attend to sleep, nutrition, and exercise. And make sure that you're sharing what you're doing with your team. Again, to share your human experience and give your team some ideas. Leaders are best served when continuing to connect with family, friends, and colleagues. Use the phone and email, but also get creative too. There might be virtual dinner parties, yard signs, parades past homes. All of these things are creative and important to show that we're all in this together. Show gratitude to others, and also connect with religious and spiritual endeavors of meaning to you. Calibrating your mindset is equally important. It's important to recognize the challenge of unhelpful thinking and questions I like to ask myself, because certainly I'm not immune to some unhelpful thinking, include, am I confusing a thought with a fact? What is the source of my information? And am I taking some examples out of context right now? really striving to get some balanced thinking in the work that I do. Most importantly is asking for help. As leaders, sometimes I think there's a thought that we're immune to stress, and that is not the case. Asking for help can include consultation or maybe more formal emotional support. So talk to your leadership, talk to a colleague, a coach, a mentor, or even a counselor through your employee assistance program. Know that being a leader requires humility and not perfection.
Okay, well, thank you, Amy and Leo both. So there are a number of key takeaways from the information that they both shared with us. So I would say these are, continuing to update employees on safety, looking into expanding your wellness, health, and mental health wellness services if possible. Finding tangible ways that you can deliver wellness to the employees. See if you can come up with a clear inventory of different types of emotional wellness resources that you can provide for your employees. And then the most important thing is keeping in mind that when you're dealing with a pandemic, it's not a sprint. This isn't going to be over quickly. This is more of a marathon. So we're in this for the long haul. So finding resources to help us get through this is really important. So we've had a bunch of questions come through both before this and now. As the talk has been going on, we've been receiving a bunch of questions too. So we're going to see if we can address all of these. Let's see. The first one I'd like to start with, new normal. So we keep hearing a lot about new normal. Can any of you guys tell me about what new normal means?
I'll take a stab at that, Amanda. I think it's a little bit of a misnomer because this situation that we're in is far from normal. It's important to understand that the pandemic is going to be a chronic event and that we're going to be forced to adapt to it. And I think, us as individuals, we're much better at adapting to things that are acute, and then we can regroup to something that's going to be more prolonged and have some areas of uncertainty. And so I think when people kindly mention that this is going to be the new normal, it's really a deviation from the previous way of doing things. And there's certain, we don't know as well how long that's going to be. What I think when you hear that, one of the ways to build some resiliency about that is that we need to be flexible and that we're going to be getting different directives. We're going to get different information. We're going to get hopefully new science. We're going to base that on actions on the science. And it's really going to force us to adapt. When we have to adapt, it does challenge our resiliency. It does call us to maximize our coping strategies, as Amy went through those. But that's how I would maintain, when people say the new normal.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. How do we help people? So, all right now we're doing a lot of talking with employers and the public in general about the seriousness of protecting themselves, how important it is to make sure you're protecting yourself and your family. How do we help people overcome the fear of working with others when everything we're talking about is about the seriousness of protecting themselves?
Right. No, that's a good question. And I think we've also had to look inward at our organization. Just to share with you, we've had to make it clear to our employees that the Cleveland Clinic is taking every measure possible to make this the safest possible environment to work. So I think the first step is to really validate. I like to use the word that you're concerned, not so much that you're fearful, but you're really concerned, and being scared is actually okay. But knowing and counteracting that there are safety measures in place, frankly, that these are all validated. They frankly involve things that are very common sense, such as washing your hands, using a face mask, avoiding, contact, keeping the safe distance, that this is doable. And I think if you message that as a leader, your employees will follow very clearly. You have to model that behavior though, and it has to stop. So it has to start from the top all the way down.
Okay, great. We've had a couple of questions, both before and during the talk today, about this topic, which is remote work. So one of the questions from online is, what are some easy ways and healthy ways to disconnect from work at home while still expecting to be working from home? So this is very similar to another person who asked about how do you decompress and turn yourself off when you're working from home.
I think I'd like to answer that question. As I've been working remotely for the last month, certainly decompression is really not a hard stop at the end of one's workday. It's something that people need to be mindful of throughout the course of the day. So as you're working your 8, 9, 10-hour day, whatever it may look like, feel free to take some time to decompress throughout. Stand every hour, do some deep breathing, engage in some helpful thinking along the way. Mindful moments, mindfulness exercises are really helpful to keep fresh and alert. Set boundaries with your family. Make sure that there's time that you can be free from interruption, but also let them know when there are times when you are indeed available to connect. And then when the work is truly done at the end of the day, make sure that you truly disconnect. Being in one's home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's very easy to get highly motivated and compelled to check one's email and voicemail and work throughout the weekend. Be very intentional and deliberate about ensuring that you're engaging in self-care activities, hobbies, even if you have to schedule them. I know somebody who said, well, it's not like I'm going anywhere. And it's not like I have anything scheduled. And
might as well work.
That's true, right? And yet there are ways that we can put things on our calendar to show that it's just as meaningful and important as stepping outside of one's home.
That's an interesting thought. Should people put almost scheduled personal time onto their calendars when they're working at home, since it's so easy to blur those lines? Should they put onto the calendar, like walk the dog for 30 minutes or?
Yep.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea to make sure that you're holding self-care equally important to every other duty and responsibility to yourself and others.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. Okay. How about, I love this question. So we got this question ahead of time. This has got to be one of my favorites. How does a hugger survive when your automatic reaction is to want to reach out and connect?
I was excited to take that question on today. As I've married into a family of huggers. So I think it's really important, whether it's hugging or even handshakes in the workplace. It is so customary to go to your normal route of greeting one another. So you have to really prepare in advance. Choose words that you think will convey the same meaning. Use the inflection of your voice and make contact with one another in a way that shows warmth and appreciation. And if you mess up along the way and you accidentally shake someone's hand and you give somebody a hug, it's okay to move on. Be gentle with yourself. Sanitize your hands, as Leo's pointing out to me across the table. But certainly, be gentle with yourself. You're human. You may make some mistakes along the way. Pick up where you left back off and try again.
Fantastic. Okay. As an OC health doc, I particularly like this one. So what are some options to support employee well-being for smaller companies? You know, ones that are small enough that they might not have an employer assistance program. Like, what can these small businesses do?
I think it's important to recognize the menu of resources that may be available on a more national level. And certainly, too, if you do not have an employee assistance program, obviously I might be a little partial to looking at investing in one moving forward. There are a number of things that you can do, even if it's not a robust EAP, in terms of consultation and developing some in-house resources, applications, coaching, peer support initiatives. We have several of those within our organization right now, which really are a wonderful resource to serve as a bridge to more professional services. But I would say for smaller employers, thinking about making those connections and at least investing in consultation would be important.
Okay. How about for organizations that have employees in customer service roles? How can HR help those employees support the customers they're speaking with?
I'll take a stab at that. I think, again, it's really important for employees in customer service or any sort of people-facing roles to understand that anxiety, stress, anger, frustration are kind of normal right now. And so that might be something that you would anticipate in greater proportion than normal. So using empathy, understanding where your customer is at this given time is really important. Ensuring that we're not taking things personally. If someone gets frustrated or anxious or asks a ton of questions or maybe raises their voice, it may not be about us personally, but about where that customer is at that moment.
Good point.
And then be a role model. So don't feed into that anxiety. There's ways of being empathic in one's responses and saying, you know, I hear that this is frustrating for you, or I can appreciate your concern. Something that lets the person know that you understand and can connect with them as a human. So I think for HR professionals and employers alike, it's important to help your employees understand the mental health and well-being of others and have some scripting going into those conversations well-defined in advance.
That's a good idea. So really taking the time to listen, realizing that if somebody's upset, you know, really not just taking it at face value, but exploring more what's going on and how you can support that person. Yeah.
If I could pitch in,
absolutely,
great comments is that, you know, we experienced this when we started to look at the entry of our employees in the Cleveland Clinic. And so we had these stations where everybody was being scanned and they were giving a mask. And we had to go through some scripting with the frontline folks that were there to help validate the concerns about our employees coming in, letting them know that we're doing this to protect them, understand that this is a different procedure. But to do that from a role of confidence, and empathy, which you were alluding to. So I think that scripting and planning through and validating that this is something different, that investment up front, I think makes that transition a lot easier.
Makes sense. This is actually kind of similar to this. So somebody asked, we have some employees who have high-risk conditions. What kind of special considerations should we keep in mind to help them feel secure in coming back? Are there any special supports needed for their unique emotional needs as these particular individuals come back?
So these are individuals that have physical risks, maybe perhaps some chronic disease, and then doing that too.
Correct.
No, absolutely. And I think this is, again, speaks to the savviness of the organization. To how much of that work can be done remotely. This is a consideration that we had to take here at the Cleveland Clinic, you know, looking at the at-risk population. How much of that can be done in a quiet environment where there are minimal interactions with customers and you can really respect the boundaries of the 6 feet and having the mask and minimal interactions. But I think it really has to be prefaced with a frank discussion with that individual as to where they're at. And you have to understand what is at stake and see what accommodations can be made. I think there's not one size that fits all. And I think you have to look at those in an individual case. but certainly starts with empathy and validation.
Okay. Right. Let's see. So we've got this question. A lot of employees are scared to come back to work. What resources does Cleveland Clinic have to help ensure we're bringing back workers safely? So that's probably twofold, because part of that is an occupational health issue, which is more in my department, which would have a lot to do with, we have a number of different services available where we can have someone serve as a medical director and help employers with very specific details of getting their employees back to work. We have a hotline available where we can assist an employer with their employees if they have questions or concerns that are COVID related and they need to reach out to somebody and talk things through. They can utilize this hotline. We have a number of things like that. I would say from a mental health and well-being standpoint, what types of offerings does the Cleveland Clinic have to help support employers?
So with our employee assistance program, again, we've done a lot of work in ensuring, again, that 24-hour, 7-day-a-week emotional support line, the continued availability of our distance technology to offering virtual counseling appointments, continued literature and information regarding emotional and mental well-being, rapid access to our colleagues in psychiatry and psychology along the way. And then we also rolled out a Boost telephone appointment, which is just a brief 30-minute appointment developed around issues of stress in relation to COVID-19 and the building of resilience. So again, number of resources, and I think what's really nice about working here at the Cleveland Clinic is that people are very good about knowing about those resources, making those referrals. As leaders, it's really important to be able to say, hey, I'm concerned about you, and I'd like to at least let you know what's available. And so having those frank conversations about resources will continue to be important for caregivers coming back to work.
Okay. And I would say if employers have specific questions or need support with setting up something like this, they would be able to reach out to us too. And we could help support them in building something like this for their own individual employers as well.
Absolutely. You know, I represent our internal employee assistance program, but we have a very well-regarded external employee assistance program as well called Lifestyle EAP. My colleagues and I continue to partner on these ideas and initiatives. So not only can we do this work in-house, but we can bring it to a number of employers as well.
And that is a program, the Lifestyle EAP is available for groups outside of the Cleveland Clinic, right? So employers would be able to partner with us on something like that for them as well.
Absolutely. And one of the things to a previous participant's question, Lifestyle works with a number of very small organizations and employers as well. So, you know, I don't think that being a small employer needs to be an exclusion to ensuring that you have all the resources available to people's mental and emotional well-being.
Right. And actually, that seems like a great idea, because that would, if a smaller company was able to access a service like that, it gives them access to a wide range of things outside just EAP itself. So that could be really helpful. Okay.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I think probably is misunderstood about an employee assistance program, I think a lot of people assume that it's just counseling alone. And while that is a great deal of our book of business, there are a number of other resources that can be carved out and made available, including on-site support, consultation to leadership, and having very difficult conversations with employees who maybe are manifesting performance or behavioral health issues, There can also be some other wellness offerings, financial counseling, etc. So it really is a broad brush product with a number of resources for emotional and other forms of well-being.
That's a really good point, because there's a company I used to work for, and we spent a lot of time trying to help our employees understand that EAP was not just for people with drug and alcohol issues, because traditionally, in specific industries especially, traditionally people think EAP is where you go when you have an alcohol problem. But there's so much more that's offered, including emotional support, help with finances, help with, child care, adult care, elder care, all of those things. And those are all available through EAP. So we would spend a lot of time trying to educate folks that it's more than just drug and alcohol. There's so much more to it. And COVID is this COVID pandemic is a perfect opportunity for people to really explore the types of things that EAP can offer. So this is kind of a full package that can really help people. Okay, next question. So somebody has asked, are there any apps or tools that you would recommend employees use to help manage their stress and remain resilient?
I think that there are several tools on the website that I would encourage people to reference.
On our website? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
So, some of those things you can find through the Employer Solutions site. And certainly with our wellness initiatives as well. And over the years, we've had a Stress-Free Now program that's been highly successful. We also have some sleep apps that are very successul.
Nice.
And then I really am excited about the Clarity program and the e-coaching that's available. Primarily, it's email exchanges with behavioral health professionals and other licensed professionals over a time-limited period. But certainly, I love the complement of resources that can be available.
Okay, great. Changing gears a little bit, and this is a fun question actually. So my business has remained open as an essential service, but the nature of our work has changed dramatically. How do you recommend I authentically show appreciation and gratitude to my employees for their flexibility and patience through this crisis? I like that one.
Well, first of all, I applaud you for what you've done, as far as I'm sure meeting a need that is certainly important for all of us to battle this pandemic. I think the first thing is just by even raising the question that you did. I really want to know and how you've done with this transition, and I really want to tell you verbally how much we're appreciative of doing that. Acknowledging that transition, what that's meant for your crew is very important. Again, going back to what this pandemic means for us, we have to be flexible. We have to adapt. And sometimes we're all, creatures of habit in doing that. And so recognizing that, validating that, giving it the emotional support that I think is already inherent in the way that question is asked, to me is already on the right path. And I applaud that person for doing and raising that really good question.
Absolutely. This actually has come up in my own clinic because during the COVID pandemic, I've been spending a lot of time away from my office and here at main campus. And unfortunately, because I've been spending so much time here doing this, I haven't been able to spend anywhere near as much time at my normal clinics. And so I really think that the folks that work with me in my clinics have felt a little neglected. And so I've been, it came to my attention. So I have been attempting to, I've been making a point to give them updates and reach out more so that they know. Because I absolutely 100% appreciate all of the flexibility, everything they've been doing, but I haven't been very good at communicating that. And I need to get better at that. So, just so they understand that they really are appreciated. And I do really appreciate all of the flexibility and the hard work that they've been doing. So yeah. Okay. How about this? How can employers teach empathy best practices? That's another good one.
I think empathy really is something that starts with role modeling and examples. And I think we see that with our leadership here at the Cleveland Clinic. Within the last couple of years, there was an amazing empathy video that was broadcast in-house across the organization. And I'm pretty sure I cried every time I saw it. Beautiful video that really just shows a lot about human connection, putting oneself in another person's shoes. And even if you can't relate to one's experience, you can certainly relate to a time when you felt something similar. So a lot of it is a continuation of a campaign to have people understand what empathy is about, how empathy can help support a business in so many ways, whether it be in customer service or employee morale. But not just talking the talk, but walking the walk and showing it by example. So there are a number of trainings that can be offered on that, both to leaders and employees moving forward.
Okay. And this kind of goes hand in hand with that. And this question was, how can leaders and managers demonstrate better empathy toward their employees and customers?
One of the big things that I emphasize with our leaders right now is there may be some times when employees and or customers are acting in a way that's a little different than the norm. Maybe a little edgy, maybe not as productive as they once were. It's really important to slow down and check in with people and in a spirit of curiosity, ask them some questions in terms of how are you doing and what do you need right now. I think that can be really helpful along the way. We also have a really good program here at the Cleveland Clinic regarding Respond with Heart and a number of other heart-related initiatives that do just that. It's not only educational in terms of teaching people how to respond in a way that's empathetic, but it also gives hands-on experience and role play and demonstration. So people not only hear it, but they actually do it.
Under curiosity, I don't know if either of you guys know this, but is there information out there on our website, for example, on our Responding with Heart program, like information out there that we can that employers could look at just to get an idea of something they could do themselves?
Certainly, we have a number of resources through our patient experience office, and for people who need any additional information, I think at the conclusion of this webinar, there will be an email contact. So if there's any inquiries about some of the services that we've mentioned today, I encourage participants to check in with us.
I'd just like to add on to that, besides the terrific techniques that I think many of our colleagues employ over here, there's the actual presence of walking around and checking in. If this is a time in our lives where having the leadership just get out of the office, off the visual, and granted that, with some of the limitations that we have with social distancing, but just checking in, making more of an active effort. Sometimes that visit, which is unannounced, goes so far as giving support, validating where that employee is, and to be very frank, also just making sure that that person's doing okay and checking in. So just encouragement. We've been beneficiaries of that, and just encourage you to do that too in your leadership roles.
Yeah, that makes sense too, because I know, and I'm sure this has happened to all of us, we've all at some point worked for an employer who didn't do that. And you feel that frustration as an employee when you're working really hard and, the boss has no clue who you are, no clue what your contribution is to the company. And you're just thinking, gosh, why am I doing this? And it makes such a difference when your supervisor, your leaders, stop by and say, hey, how you doing? How are your kids? Are you hanging in there okay? Is your family healthy? That makes such a difference. So, okay. Okay. Well, do you guys have any other comments you'd like to make before we wrap it up today?
No, I'm just so grateful that we've had an opportunity to talk with one another today about the resources that we have in emotional well-being. I think it's definitely going to be a long-term topic of discussion here in our organization and others as well. And certainly, as Leo had mentioned, post-traumatic stress, there are a number of mental health and well-being issues that will continue to come about. We expect increases in suicidality, drug and alcohol use, grief, trauma. So being well prepared for those reactions is something that I encourage every organization to further explore.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for being on the call today. Just as a reminder, a recording of today's session will be available for playback that you can listen to and you can share with your colleagues as well. I hope you'll be joining us again for future webinars in our series, including next week's session on testing strategies for employers in the era of COVID-19. You can also please visit our website, clevelandclinic.org/COVID-19 and sign up for updates from the Cleveland Clinic. Your health and the health of your workforce is of the utmost importance. So if you have any questions or you would like to connect with us for any additional assistance, please contact us at employersolutions@ccf.org. Again, that's employersolutions@ccf.org. You can see it up on your screens. Thank you all for your support and thank you for listening today. Be well and stay strong. Thanks, everyone.